Hi, Zach Nathan from Gingerhill Farm Retreat. Some weeks ago, one of my members asked me, what are our guiding principles? Good question, I thought. Let me get back to you. And so I thought about it a lot. And as I was trying to come up with words like compassion and honesty and all these noble sounding words, I realized, wait a second, community is actually something I have a lot of opinions about. You see, I grew up in community. Whether it was in Princeton, New Jersey, and my dad's students, the hippies from the university hanging out at our farm, or later when we moved to Muir Beach, California, and we lived in San Francisco Zen Center's Green Gulch Farm, I grew up living with other families. It's interesting because I recently had a chance to go back and visit Green Gulch Farm, and I was amazed at how much they'd grown. They are a thriving, large community. And as I was walking around looking at their infrastructure and their beautiful buildings, I saw the signs. There were little wooden signs and laminated piece of paper and Post-its. And they said things like, conserve water, turn off the lights, be mindful of this, be mindful of that. And I thought to myself, maybe this is what it takes to have a successful community. You have to have really strict rules and codes of behavior so that people know how to act and get along. But then I remembered that when I was a kid living at Green Gulch, they had these steep hills, and when the grass would get dry in the summer, we used to take our cardboard sleds and slide down them, and we'd always get in trouble. The baldies, as we used to call them, the Zen monks, they would come and they would scold us because they weren't big on fun. And I remember how that made me feel as a kid. It just was rigid and austere, and it wasn't an environment that I wanted to be in. And so in thinking about guiding principles for my community, the community that I've created here, I realized, how do we create a structure which serves us but still allows for fun and freedom? So when I think about big picture things like this, I have a method. I get quiet, I close my eyes, and then I throw questions out and I wait for answers. Okay? So this is what I did this time. I said, why? Why do people come and want to live in community? Why do we do this? Why do we live in community? And I sat and I listened. And this is the answer that I got. People live in community because they hope that by living and working together, by collaborating, they can more joyfully and efficiently achieve their goals. Okay, cool, I thought that's great, that's a start. So I took this and I made it our first principle. Collaboration, it's the idea of cooperation, okay? Cooperation, this means, are you a collaborator? Are you someone that knows how to share? Someone that will participate, show up, right? Are you a social person? Are you social? I mean social as in needing companionship and therefore best suited to living in communities, as opposed to antisocial, not sociable, not wanting the company of others, or contrary to the laws and customs of society, devoid of or antagonistic to sociable instincts or practices, right? Because if you're a recluse, if you're the lone wolf, then maybe you're better off suited to living in the woods in a cabin or an anonymous apartment. Maybe community is not right for you, right? Just because you want to be around people doesn't mean that people are going to want to be around you, okay? So next I want to think about, who did I want around me? So I threw that question out there. And the answer I got was to be surrounded by good, honest people who want to make themselves and the world better. Great. So I broke this sentence down into its parts, and I turned them into principles too. I want to surround myself with good and honest people. Good, altruism. Honest, integrity. That want to make themselves and the world a better place. Introspection, the pursuit of wellness and service. To this I added one more principle which seemed essential to community, and that was silence. So here they are again, the 7 guiding principles, what I'm calling the 7 pillars of community. Cooperation, altruism, integrity, vision, the pursuit of wellness, service, and silence. So altruism is described as doing good unto others with no noticeable benefit or even detriment to oneself. Right? Given the choice, don't we all want to surround ourselves with people who are nice to one another? Right? We don't want to live next to puppy kickers, right? People that kick puppies or do nasty things, right? And it ultimately is the idea of do no harm, which I think is the very minimum that we should all aspire to. Okay? The next principle is integrity. And this is defined as 1, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. The second definition is a state of being whole and undivided, like structural integrity, right? Integrity goes beyond simply doing no harm towards doing what is right, of being honest and standing for something, for speaking the truth. It's about doing as you say and being accountable. But this second definition of integrity, of the undivided whole, raises a discussion about what it means to be whole. They say that surviving any childhood can be the basis for a great tragic novel, which means that we're all in various stages of healing from the traumas of our past. A really quick online search pulled up this idea of the 3 stages of healing, which are helpful to illustrate how our relationship to hardship determines our worldview. So regardless of the individual trauma that we experienced, we typically go through 3 stages of healing in relation to that hardship, which we can classify as victim, survivor, and thriver. And I like to just read these for you. A victim is any person who suffers from trauma caused by threats or actions, real or perceived. A victim may or may no longer be involved with the original injury, but continues to suffer trauma which manifests in some or all of the following behaviors: continued dysfunctional relationships, recurring crises, continued necessity of basic needs, lack or adequate attention to health, an unwillingness or inability to engage in self-reflection, a lack of meaningful movement towards recovery or change. A survivor is a person who similarly suffers from trauma but is actively working to heal from the detrimental effects of this injurious event. Survivors may be fragile and can possibly be re-traumatized. A survivor may shift in and out of victimization and may be involved in some or all of the same behaviors as victims. The difference is that while survivors might still experience periodic crises, there is a meaningful self-reflection and deliberate movement towards recovery. The last one, thriver, no longer or minimally suffers the trauma that once defined them. Thrivers feel empowered to make healthy decisions about their lives and the people that surround them. They may experience periodic crises, but they have the resources and/or skills to cope and restore order in their lives. Thrivers engage in meaningful self-reflection and make active plans toward continued personal growth. Thrivers can reach out to others because they are emotionally stable and can help others because they are not in danger of being easily rewounded. They understand boundaries and seek more balance and happiness in their lives. Okay? So who doesn't want to thrive? Like if on the scale of victim, survivor, thriver, I definitely want to surround myself with people on this side of the scale. Okay? Now, living in community is not easy, and that's because of the increased likelihood of interaction and feedback that we get in community. And this brings up the next guideline of introspection, or what I'm calling vision. Introspection is defined as the ability to look at one's own emotional and mental processes, which is crucial to any sort of personal growth. But in order to live in community, we have to go beyond mere introspection and strive for vision, which I'm classifying as the ability to see outwardly as well, right? Not just awareness of our own processes, but also how our actions affect others. Community is guaranteed to trigger all of your issues because you're getting all that feedback, right? If you've ever had siblings or roommates or live in apartments or had neighbors, you know how annoying other people's unconscious habits can be, right? But are you aware of your own? Do you talk incessantly? Are you a fidgeter? Do you drum? Maybe you're an unconscious singer or hummer. My grandfather was a hummer, and he was deaf, and he'd spend his days reading the paper like this. And that was like the childhood background noise that I remember from my childhood. It's a constant source of mindless noise pollution that he couldn't hear and wasn't aware of, right? We live in community, so in order to get this kind of direct and continual feedback from the group about our actions so that we can grow and become better. But you have to make sure that you're up for this challenge. This takes us to our next guiding principle, that of the pursuit of wellness. This has to do with your lifestyle and your habits. Like, what kind of person are you? Do you like to play video games on the couch and drink soda? Or do you like to go out and get some sun and go for a swim, right? Are your choices life-affirming? To work ourselves to death, for example, that's not the goal, right? We want optimal health and satisfaction beyond just healthy in the physical sense, but truly thriving in our whole being. This idea of whole being health, of wellness, it's like a gem composed of 7 facets, and they all have to be polished in order for that gem to sparkle. So let's take a look at these 7 facets of wellness. The first, and perhaps the most obvious, is physical health. And this is similar to all other pursuits, right? Who doesn't want to enlist the full brunt of their focus and vigor and strength towards the pursuit of their dreams? This facet addresses the daily habits of diet, movement, sleep, light exposure, and stress management, right? The second facet is emotional health. This is the balance between introspection and getting to know oneself and one's feelings, and transcendence, the process of letting go of attachments. This process creates more inner space, and it helps us to mitigate stress and allows for further exploration. The third is mental health. Practicing techniques like meditation while continuing to learn new skills and hone old ones through hobbies allows us to both grow and engage and quiet the mind. This type of mental exercise can create healthier thought cycles. The next one is financial health, and this is pretty simple. How do we provide for our basic security so that we feel safe to pursue our bliss? Next one, social health. How do we relate to others and surround ourselves with those who align with our goals? How do we make space to honor intimacy in our lives? Okay. Next, spiritual health. How do we deepen our connection to meaning and purpose? Last of all, we have balance. This is the most difficult one of all of these, but perhaps the most crucial, right? This is what they call the middle path in Buddhism. It's about finding the right rhythm for yourself so that you can maintain a steady course over time without burning out. I remember a story from my youth in high school. I graduated high school in '85, and we drank a lot in high school. That's what we did. And we would invent, beer bongs and funnels so we could ingest more alcohol more quickly. So it wasn't much of a surprise when I lost my license before I turned 17, okay, less than a year. So my whole senior year I didn't have my license, and it probably saved my life. But in that whole process, the courts made me go to the youth substance abuse program. And the first thing they told me is, you're an alcoholic. Okay, I thought, I'm an alcoholic, okay. The definition might have changed since then, but back then, the definition was, if you have had trouble with the law or your family because of alcohol, you're an alcoholic. She went on to say that it really didn't matter how often you drank. In fact, you could only drink once a year and still be an alcoholic. And then she told me this story of this woman who used to go out every year on her birthday, get hammered and crash her car and total her car. She was an alcoholic even though she only drank once a year. So it's really about your relationship to alcohol, okay, not the frequency. But she also went on to say something interesting. She said, if you have any doubt about whether or not you're an alcoholic, go ahead and try this. Go out, order a drink. When you're finished with that drink, order another. If you can go home after the second drink without ordering a third, you're not an alcoholic. And this really stuck with me because I realized it's not about self-indulgence or self-denial, but it's about balance. It's about the middle way, right? And we have to find that for ourselves through exploration and trial. I recently watched this documentary called Wild, Wild Country, and it was about Rajneeshpuram. Rajneesh's intentional community in Oregon in the 80s. And it was amusing because at one point I noticed that they experimented with giving their residents beer on tap with the stipulation that there was a 2-drink maximum. So maybe that's something we need to try here at our community. By addressing these 7 facets of wellness in our lives, we take measures to allow for the total satisfaction of our whole being. Wouldn't you want to surround yourself with people who examine health through this lens and commit to the pursuit of these ideals? The next guideline is service. And this is seminal to the success of any community, right? This idea that we always do our share and a little more. Why? Because that's the world we want to live in, right? Maybe you practice your service through work for the environment, or maybe you're a proponent of zero waste. It could be as simple as removing the dryer lint so that the next person won't have to do it for you. It's about leaving things better than you found them, about waiting your turn, right? In these small ways we serve. The proven benefits of volunteering are huge. They include stress and anger and anxiety management, an increased sense of purpose, right? More confidence. Service builds the muscles of humility and makes us feel good. It's good for us, it's good for our community, and it's great for the planet. The last one, and perhaps the most important, is silence. We touched earlier on how sounds and energy affect others, right, under that principle of integrity. But I thought it worth mentioning again separately. And this is because in the context of community, silence is the one commodity that can quickly become rare or even extinct, right? We mustn't let that happen. Remember that noise is pollution, and we're most affected, most attuned to the human voice, talking. So perhaps your phone conversations aren't as harmless as you think. You have to make time for silence. You have to honor it and make it sacred. Whether it be silent hours that we all respect, or headphones when you listen to music or movies. Don't fill other people's space with your noise. If you need to make noise, go out into the bigger world and do it. But preserve the sanctity of silence in your community, right? In this way, we can be great neighbors and improve the harmony of the community where we live. Community can be symbiotic and synergistic, but it can also be toxic. There are as many types of community out there as there are subgenres of culture. Just do an online search and you'll see it's unbelievable. But which one do you want to be a part of? What I've described here, these guidelines, that's the community that I envisioned for myself, the one that I want to be a part of. A community of thriving collaborators who are committed to a more blissful and productive life. Will you join me? Thank you.